college football is, definitely a big part of our culture here at Central and a major player within our athletic department, our alums, and our donor base.
The council is now in session.
With a personality shaped by being an athlete and a background in mainstream sports media, I found that the stories I was most interested in telling were the ones often overlooked, the ones that might not otherwise be told, the ones that show the intangible and not just the highlight reel. The Sports Council is about highlighting the great, the good, the unique, and everything in between in the Pacific Northwest sports world. I'm Jamie Council. Thanks for joining me.
You're listening to the Sports Council on 1340 ESPN, the Tri-Cities leader in sports.
Happy Thursday, September 14th, and welcome to the Sports Council. I'm Jamie Council. How are we liking this new time slot? 11:30 now, every Thursday, right here on 1340 ESPN, your Tri-Cities leader in sports. And before we get going, I do want to give a shout out to Stevens Middle School in Pasco. They had me out to their newsletter writing class to talk about journalism and just to talk about the students and interact with them. And I tell you what, those kids are so smart. I think back to when I was in junior high and I was wearing just Napoleon Dynamite shirts. And those kids are just way smarter than I was. I bet their mom went to college, for those that get that reference. But I do need to share one story from that visit before we get into things. So Paz Zuniga is the teacher of the class, also a coach for Richland Bomber football. So Mr. Zuniga was helping lead a Q&A, and he knew that I had played professional football and asked the question, how do you like, or what was it like being a female on a male team? And I don't really like that question. That's another story. I think it's a valid question, but basically I answered saying that I'm going to answer your question with the answer to a different question in another classroom that I had spoken to. One of the kids asked me, who do you prefer for teammates, males or females? And my question was, well, who am I going to win with? Who are the better teammates? Who have the skills that it takes to win? And just to kind of bring that up. And it was funny because I kind of asked it as a rhetorical question in the class, like, well, who's going to help you win, males or females? And one of the boys was like, boys. And it was so funny because he didn't even mean it as a joke. And I went full Trump. I was like, wrong. And then I back that up just talking about how your gender, or even when as far as saying your race, your background, it has no hold on what you can do. It has no hold on your ability to be a teammate, on accountability. And basically that those things, whatever it may be, including gender, doesn't put a limit on your abilities or your success, no matter what the arena is. So anyways, good times. Thank you to Stevens Middle School. I hope the kids took something from that visit. So in today's show, we have some tea. I wish I had some tea here just to, get into it, but we're going to be talking about the Pac-12, and there's a lot of legal issues coming up, so I want to break down some of it. And then later in the show, we're going to hear from Central Washington Athletic Director Dannie Francois. The CWU football program switch conferences now in the Lone Star Conference. Not as much drama, if any, to be had there, but it's really interesting looking at the culture of a Division II program versus a Power 5, or, now we're going to see the Amazing Four or whatever they're going to label it as. But Dr. Francois has been at Central since 2013, has done a great job over at Ellensburg, so looking forward to catching up with him later in the show. But we're going to take a quick break and hear from those that make this show possible. You're listening to the Sports Council on 1340 ESPN, your Tri-Cities leader in sports. Welcome back to the Sports Council. So we are diving into the unprecedented dramas and legalities going on in the Pac-12. So first off, I know there's a lot of jokes, Pac-2, is Pac-4, whatever it is. We are going to refer to it as the Pac-12 because I want people to view it as a business entity. That is the name, and that is very important when we're breaking all of this down. So to kind of go over things, it was the Pac-4, but then the ACC, Atlantic Coast Conference, added Stanford, Cal, as well as SMU. And that will, by adding those three schools, the media rights income with a long-term deal from ESPN should really boost that because, right, it's all about the TV deals in that revenue. So with that, in the 21-22 season, they had about $617 million, just to put a figure on the type of money that they bring in. And of course, it's split from the schools. Notre Dame only getting a partial because they are an independent school for football. And the Big Ten is actually the highest earner when we're taking a look at the Power Five. And it breaks down to $58 million per school per year. So that is kind of the ballpark numbers we are looking at, and those numbers way above what the Pac-12 school members were making, hence a lot of them jumping ships. So the Power Five is becoming the Elite Four, is what we're looking at. The Big Ten lured away Oregon and Washington, and that came a little more after a year from when USC, UCLA started the migration to the East, right? When they announced they were leaving the Pac-12 for the Big Ten starting in 2024. And the Big 12, of course, poached the Pac-12 schools, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah. So the Pac-12 now down to Oregon State and WSU, Washington State. So you might think the conference, well, there is no conference, they're done for. That is where you are wrong. And that's why I, again, wanted to call the Pac-12 the Pac-12. Because just because most of their members left, that doesn't mean that it isn't a business entity. That doesn't mean that they don't have a business footprint and things don't disappear, including the assets. So that is what this is all about. It's just a big legal battle over money. So the schools that left feel like they're entitled to their piece of the pie as well as the asset split, including, this is a big one, March Madness money. So I didn't know this until looking into this. So schools that participate in March Madness, they get paid for participating, but it's on a 6-year basis. So how many ever games you have, you get a certain count. So I think what this 6-year cycle will be paid out in the spring of 2025. And a big thing is in 2021, there was 19 total tallies. So if that excess cash were all pooled together, what it breaks down to is roughly $44 million for that NCAA money. And I'll be sure to post links to these articles that I got this information from in the show notes. So this is where things get dicey and where it all started. So Pac-12 Commissioner George Kliavkoff tried to hold a meeting, and what that meeting was, it was probably to disband the Pac-12 and vote to split up the assets. But they can't legally do that because once you leave, you're not a voting member. So he went so far as to say, let's have a meeting of the Pac-12 CEOs because they're not voting board members, they are CEOs. And so that is when the legal battle started where Oregon State and Washington State, a judge granted a temporary restraining order, and that was on Monday to prevent departing Pac-12 members from meeting until it can be determined who has the right to chart the future of the disintegrating conference. So on Monday, that judge forced the Pac-12 to cancel the Wednesday board meeting in which departing schools probably, like I said, this is what everybody is saying, that they were going to vote to disband the conference. So WSU and Oregon State said, whoa, hold up, you guys left. And I get where they're talking from, like, well, we were part of this, but let me put it into perspective. It's like you're going through a divorce, and then somebody was like, oh, I cheated on you, and I'm gonna make you pay my legal fees. And I'm going to go a step further, because I think it's worse than that. I think it's more like, I cheated on you and I want you to pay for the wedding of the person that I cheated on you with. So that is, I guess, putting it into perspective when we're talking about legalities. So the temporary restraining order prevents any formal board meetings until the court resolves the dispute regarding which schools can participate in Pac-12 votes. So who is in charge in voting and deciding for the future of the Pac-12, the business entity, rather than those that are leaving? Because if you're leaving, you're just looking at cashing out and running away. And so Oregon State and Washington State obviously want full control over the decision making for the conference, as the only schools committed to the league beyond the current school year, when everybody else is jumping ship. So it's really interesting. And I'll also put a note for the court filed complaint on the show notes if you want to look at that. So what does that mean moving forward? So obviously, one, either the leaving schools will or will not get their assets, get their money, child support, I guess, if we're continuing on with that analogy. But regardless, they're making more money. That's why they jumped ship. So they might feel a little bit, but they're going to be making more money than they were at the Pac-12. So they'll be fine regardless. But I think why that money is so important, and why WSU and Oregon State are holding tight to the Pac-12, is because they don't really have a viable step forward. The two biggest things that I saw is talking about either going into the Mountain West or bringing the Mountain West into the Pac-12 and having them come into the business entity known as the Pac-12. And then that money, that was the assets from the other schools, would go to fund that move and help get the Pac-12 set up. So there's no exact way of knowing what exactly will happen, but that is what the fight is all about. It's just a big legal battle over money. And you know what? Sports, you just like the athletic play, and you like the fun of sports, right? Well, there's that at the Division II level. So when we come back, we're going to hear from Central Washington Athletic Director Dannie Francois. But first, let's hear from our sponsors. You're listening to the Sports Council on 1340 ESPN, your Tri-Cities leader in sports.
It's Dannie Francois, Director of Athletics at Central Washington University, and entering my 11th year at Central. Prior to Central, I was at Drake University. I was an Associate AD for External Affairs. I was there for roughly 5 years. And prior to that, I was at Southern Oregon University in Ashland, Oregon. Athletic Director there for roughly 3.5 years. And prior to that, I was a faculty member in higher education for 8 years. I was a professor, and during my last stay at New Mexico Highlands University. Was asked to serve as the interim athletic director, and I did that for about a year and a half. And fortunately or unfortunately, didn't get the permanent position, but stuck around for another year and then got the position at Southern Oregon. But yeah, it's been a kind of an atypical route to the AP chair, and but definitely enjoyable and some hard knocks along the way. But it's been great.
Yeah, your whole, I guess, background has been leading up to this. So what do you like most about being an athletic director?
Well, a lot of people ask me that, and I, of course, pretty open about, a pretty atypical path. But the one thing I really enjoy about, I guess, compared to faculty, and I really miss the classroom, love teaching that part of it as well. But just kind of seeing those instant results, and maybe that says to me I'm not very patient. That's it. But it was just kind of seeing that instant gratification to a degree in terms of, setting your sights on something and put a plan in place and see it happen, whether it be fundraising, facilities, hiring coaches and seeing that program flourish, or mentoring coaches and seeing them turn that corner and turn that program around. So that's the stuff I probably enjoy, and really you still have a lot of interaction with the students at this level. At the Division I level at Drake, I didn't have a lot of interaction with student athletes. Our whole goal here is to, hopefully, of course, number one, graduate, get a meaningful degree, but when they leave here, have a strong sense of affinity, and with Central Washington University, have that pride that they still hopefully have the rest of their lives about being a student athlete here and what that did for them, developing those life skills that they use, in everyday life, whether that be in their relationships, whether it be in employment, social life, whatever it is. And I think that's the thing that we always try to emphasize to student athletes, is that we don't get you up at 6 o'clock in the morning to and lift weights and train to just make you bigger, faster, stronger. We're developing those life skills in you that are going to, those habits, positive ones that you're going to carry on into your everyday work life and life. And so work ethic and discipline, perseverance and persistence. Probably one of the biggest ones, Jamie, is the ability to deal with setbacks and defeats. And student athletes, we face it every day. I know I've had my fair share and then some of defeats, and that's just something that a lot of people, if you don't participate in something that's as highly competitive as athletics, you don't really realize how valuable it is. But we're all going to get beat. The vast majority of us going to get beat somewhere along the line. How you respond to that is really key. When I talk to employers, and we talk about, I love hiring student athletes because, when they lose that first sale or something doesn't go well right for them, they're not like, oh my gosh, and they pull up and collapse. They go, okay, I just got beat. I need to figure out what I need to do better, and they pull the boots back on and get after it the next day. And that's something that, a lot of students don't have that experience if they haven't been, part of something that's, pretty highly involved. You've
been at Central since June 2013. You said going on your 11th year. So what makes Central so special to you? Because you went to Missouri, so it's not like this is home for you, but it is now, it sounds like.
Definitely. Well, I was born and raised in Iowa, and when I came to Ellensburg, it kind of had that same, it's an agricultural community for sure. Iowa, of course, had a lot of agriculture, and I kind of grew up around that my entire life, but there's kind of that blue collar work ethic too. And it has kind of that same feel, a little bit of, kind of, small town Iowa, even though Ellensburg would be a city where I came from. So, but it has that kind of same feel. And then Central is just a special place. And it really, I know it's a little cliche, but it's really people. We just met some unbelievable people at Central. A lot of our alumni, our donors, our fans, and of course, just our people here at the university have been absolutely outstanding. But we've had some, our fair share of accomplishments during that time, and of course, you attribute a lot of that to just kind of setting that vision for what we have as an athletic department. Our vision is CW Athletics, a program with which people are proud to be associated with. It's a pretty big bite there because we want people to be proud to be associated with Central, whether that's a former student athlete, a parent of a student athlete, an alum, a fan, our administrators, our faculty, and hey, we're doing it the right way. It's always great just to see people that do it the right way and are doing it for the right reasons. That's another big thing. But that's really what we try to do here. That student athlete experience is paramount. So all the things that we've done to improve our facilities, hiring coaches, increasing the things that we do at our events and games, it's all centered around trying to make the best student athlete experience as possible. And that doesn't come easy, and it doesn't come without a lot of help from a lot of people. Our donors have been absolutely amazing, and they deserve a lion's share of the accolades of what we've accomplished.
Absolutely. And you talked that you've had a lot of accomplishments over that time. I guess what is there a specific accomplishment or a specific feat that you're most proud of?
Well, I definitely say it's we. We've had some accomplishments because it's not just me, for sure. It's a team effort. I think probably one of the big things is just getting the Wildcat Commons phase 1 project done when we renovated the stadium and built a new track and field facility. That was really in kind of dire need. Our track and field facility was crumbling. It was truly, literally crumbling. And so that was a big part of it, is moving our track and field facility out of the stadium. And then, we built an amazing facility, but also what we did with the stadium, making it, putting the lights and the turf and making regulation for rugby, soccer, and football. So the utility we get out of that facility is just amazing. And I remember the first time our football student athletes got on that field under the lights. It was literally a couple days before our first game, or not our first game, the first game we played in there anyway. And just seeing that joy that they had, and just how hyped they were to be on the turf and under the lights. And I know we're gonna experience that here in a couple of weeks when they're into that varsity weight room and into the arena when it's completely done. But that Wildcat Commons phase 1 was big because that was really a pretty major accomplishment. It was kind of the first time we'd ever really built something with private dollars for the most part, and that's a big first.
So a lot of changes over at Central in the past couple of years, and one of those that I want to talk about is the move for football to the Lone Star Conference. It's kind of hard to compete when you don't have that many teams in a conference, which was the case for when it comes to football in the GNAC. So tell me about the process of figuring out that you needed to find a solution, and also finding that solution was moving to the Lone Star Conference for football from the GNAC.
Well, when I first came, the GNAC was halfway healthy in terms of football. We had South Dakota Mines, Dixie, Azusa, Humboldt, Simon Fraser, us, Western. So we had a pretty decent conference in terms of what the number of schools and that, considering the lack of Division II football playing schools in the West. But slowly but surely, a few programs decided to go to other conferences. One, of course, made a jump after they did that, was Dixie. And then you could look at the decisions that were, I'm sure, incredibly tough, but Azusa, Humboldt, and Simon Fraser. And those are really, really tough ones. And I think for us, number one, football is definitely a big part of our culture here at Central, and major player within our athletic department, our alums, and our donor base. So football is very, very important here. But over the course of time, when those things start happening, where we're losing that competition, we go to a double round robin, schedule, like playing each team twice. And number one, it's incredibly tough to beat a team twice, because all the things that work the first time don't work the second time because they're planning for it. So for us, it just got down to a point where, how are we going to create a schedule, and that a lot of those accolades go to our GNAC commissioner, Dave Hagman. He really was very proactive in getting kind of our first scheduling alliance together with the Lone Star. What does affiliate membership look like? And so that was kind of explored, and I think the Lone Star got to a point too where they're like, okay, we could definitely use more, because right now they were at a 17 league, and that makes it really tough to find that many non-conference games that are good games. And so I think they saw the level of play that we had here, especially us in Western, I think, and it really kind of developed out of that.
What I guess has been the biggest challenge moving to the Lone Star Conference for football?
Outside the financial part of it, it just takes a lot more coordination in terms of travel. I mean, for us, it's taking getting charter bus to take us to the airport, getting flights that are literally somewhat reasonable, but also that get us there in one plane. Last year we had to take I think we went to Dallas, and then we had to take another plane. I forget who we were playing, but we had to split the team up on 2 different flights to get to that next destination. So those things are pretty challenging, and then of course you're lining up buses when you get there. So it is that type of level of travel planning that you need to do, and that's just the time and energy on our staff.
I guess what is a good thing that has come of it? I would think that it would be great for recruiting, because now I just was talking to somebody yesterday actually about Central Washington, how you guys are in the Lone Star Conference, and like, oh, well, that's Texas. Are they even competitive? And I'm like, yeah, like they shocked everybody last year, placed second. They are second in the preseason polls, and that was just somebody's first reaction. So I would think that it's a great recruiting for Central Washington, that it puts you guys even more so on the map, that you're kind of going out, and also that you guys are a good competitive program.
No, and I think you hit it on the head. It's a lot of people have that Texas high school football mentality. It's big down there, but it is big. But I think for us, it has opened up the recruiting a bit there, not only from an athletic perspective, but our university. We had I think a record number of students from Texas last year, which was really, I mean, they were like, wow, what happened? But that was definitely part of it, was getting that exposure a little bit, and having the competitive program is also part of that.
Great stuff from Dannie Francois. Always appreciate the time that people give me on this show. And of course, you can listen to this show, obviously live, right here on 1340 ESPN. You can listen to it on demand at 1340ESPNradio.com. Notes on intangibleproduction.com, as well as wherever you get your podcasts, and now available YouTube as well. And if you're interested in Central Washington football, they have their first Lone Star Conference game this Saturday at Tomlinson Stadium in Ellensburg. Head out to the newly renovated Tomlinson Stadium, or you can join them on the Lone Star Network. That will do it for today's show. Thank you so much for joining me. Until next time, I'm Jamie Council, and now we'll go back to Seattle sports programming.